I didn't know what day it was, didn't check the calendar, didn't look at my phone, didn't even wake up the way people do on special mornings. Because to me, it was just another day to survive. No balloons, no candles, no quiet voice in my head saying you made it another year. But when I opened my door there, it was a cup of my favorite coffee, still warm, still waiting. With a note attached in handwriting I'd know even in the dark. It said, "You forgot again, but I didn't, and I never will." That's when I remembered not the date, but the feeling of what it meant to be known even when you forget to know yourself. It started with silence, not the heavy kind, not the kind that wraps itself around your chest and makes it hard to breathe, but the kind that lingers softly like a whisper. You almost remember the kind of silence that comes when you've forgotten something important but can't quite name what it is. He sat at the kitchen table, staring at my hands, waiting for coffee that had long gone cold. The light outside was gray, muted, a foggy Tuesday or maybe Wednesday. I wasn't sure. The days had blurred like ink and rainwater running together until none of it made sense anymore. I didn't look at the date. I didn't want to. Had stopped keeping track after last year, or maybe the year before that. There was nothing special about this morning, not until the knock came soft 3 times, like it didn't want to startle. May thought about ignoring it, but something in the rhythm felt familiar, so I opened the door and there it was, a small paper cup, steam still rising, tucked beside it, a note folded in half. My name was on it, written in looping letters, the kind only one person still used. I picked it up, read it, forgot how to breathe for a moment. "You forgot again." But I didn't, and I never will. No name, but I didn't need one. I knew who it was. From it had been a long time since I'd seen her, longer since I'd let her see me, not because I didn't care, but because I was tired of not being the version of myself she remembered. Back when we were both kids, she'd circle the date on my calendar in red, 2 weeks before my birthday, then 1 week, then 3 days, then every single day, until a camshed show up with a handmade card. Always a card. Always something she folded carefully with trembling hands. She never forgot, not once, even the year I moved away, even the year I didn't answer any calls. A card came anyway, with pressed flowers and a note that said, "I hope you're still out there somewhere." Sat on the step, coffee in my hand, letter in my lap, heart in my throat. Had been years, and she still remembered, still showed up, still whispered through gestures what I didn't have the strength to say aloud. "Happy birthday." The words were never written, but they were everywhere, in the warmth of the cup, in the slant of her handwriting. In the quiet way the world had paused just long enough for me to notice. Sigh stood there, too stunned to speak, too stunned to cry. Thought of all the birthdays I had spent in silence, all the candles I hadn't lit, all the wishes I hadn't made. And still she remembered, even when I had let the days slip from my mind like a loose thread. She remembered. Die. Didn't know what to do, so I did the only thing I could. I walked past the mailbox, past the empty swing that creaked in the wind, down the path we used to take after school, the one that curved toward the river. I didn't know if I'd find her, but something inside me whispered, "Gotha." Air was cold, but not unkind. It's wrapped around me like an old coat I hadn't worn in years. The river came into view, still and wide, reflecting the gray clouds above, like a mirror too tired to shine. And there she was, sitting on the bench, hands in her lap, looking out at the water as if waiting for the past to speak. She didn't turn when I approached, didn't move. She just said, "I knew you'd come eventually." I sat beside her carefully, like approaching a memory too delicate to touch. "I didn't know it was today," I said. She smiled, still facing the water. I did. I wanted to say more, wanted to explain why I had stopped caring, why I had let the calendar go quiet, but she already knew. That was the thing about her. She always knew, even when I tried to bury the truth beneath quiet days and empty inboxes. I made a cake, she said. I turned to look at her, surprised. "You didn't know if I'd show up." She shrugged. "I didn't make it for you to eat. I made it because it's what we do. It's what we always did, even if you forgot. I didn't, and I won't." The wind picked up, carrying the scent of damp leaves and river stone, We sat there for a long time, not talking, just being like we used to back when everything was easier. Back when birthdays weren't so heavy, I kept every card you ever gave me. I said. She looked at me then. Her eyes soft but steady. I know I wanted to ask how she knew, how she remembered, how she kept showing up when I kept fading, but I didn't. Beck, some things don't need to be asked. Some answers live in the space between people, in the rituals we keep, in the cups of coffee left on doorsteps, in the notes written without hope of replies. She reached into her coat, pulled something out, held it toward me. Another card, hand-folded, just like every year. This one was different, though not because of the design, not because of the words, but because of the line at the bottom: you don't have to come back all at once. Just come back eventually. I held it in both hands carefully, as if it might vanish if I blinked too hard, and for the first time in a long time I felt it, not joy, not celebration, but something quieter, something steadier, the feeling of being known, even when you've forgotten who you are. I carried the card home like it was glass, held close to my chest, tucked beneath my coat so the wind wouldn't take it. Didn't speak on the walk back. Didn't play music, didn't check my phone. All I wanted was the quiet, the stillness, her presence. Left behind like soft footprints across a frozen lake. The apartment felt different when I returned. It wasn't brighter or warmer, but it no longer felt like it belonged only to me. There was a softness in the silence, a familiar rhythm, like her voice still echoed through the room, even though she never entered. I placed the card on the table right where I'd found the coffee earlier, then sat down and finally drank. It was still warm enough to taste the memory: vanilla, cinnamon, a little too much sugar, exactly the way I liked it, even though I hadn't told her that in years. It amazed me how she remembered things I didn't. How she still saw me as someone worth remembering even now, even after I'd gone quiet for so long, even after I'd become someone else. I opened the drawer where I kept the old cards, tucked away under envelopes and receipts and letters I never sent. They were all there, pressed flat edges soft with age, one written in her voice, each one a snapshot of a moment she had decided I mattered. I laid them out across the floor chronologically, like they formed a path I hadn't noticed beneath my own feet. Some were cheerful drawings of balloons and flowers and the sun with a smiling face. Others were quiet, just a few words and her name, a promise written in ink still. Here, still your friend, still remembering. I don't know how long. I sat there reading them, rereading them, letting time fold around me like a familiar coat. The day passed slowly outside and inside me, but it passed that evening. I did something I hadn't done in years. I bought candles, one for each year I'd stopped counting, and I lit them not to celebrate, but to witness, to say, yes, this day came again. And I am still here. The last time I'd lit candles I was with her. We were still in school, still believing in the magic of cake and flame. She always made me close my eyes, even when I rolled them. Even when I said it was childish. Laugh, fold her arms. Wait, you don't have to believe in the wish, just believe in the act of making one. I remembered that now. And so, with the candles flickering, with the card on the table, with the coffee scent still in the eye, reclosed my eyes and made a wish. She didn't wish to be different or happier or younger. I just wished I hadn't waited so long to return, to let someone remember me when I had almost forgotten myself. Next morning, I wrote her a letter, not long, not poetic, just something real, remembered for both of us. Thank you for not giving up. I want to come back, even if I don't know how. Will you meet me again? Same bench, same time. I folded it, found a stamp, and walked it to her house myself, the same house she'd lived in since we were 12, with the chipped paint on the mailbox in the garden she always forgot to water, but never stopped planting. Placed the letter inside, pressed the flag up, and stood there a moment longer than I needed to, just long enough to feel the wind shift, just long enough to feel something begin again. 2 days passed, then 3. I kept checking the bench, kept looking out over the river, kept showing up. Even when no one else didn't, till the fourth day there, she was sitting with a blanket around her shoulders, 2 cups of coffee on the bench. Beside her, she didn't say anything when I sat down, just handed me the cup meant for me, still vanilla, still cinnamon. Still too much sugar, still perfect. We didn't talk for a while. The river didn't need our words. The sky didn't ask for stories, but eventually she said, "You don't have to explain where you've been." I already know. I nodded, because she did. Most people leave, but not everyone forgets. She added, "You just needed time, and time is allowed." I blinked against the wind, or maybe against something softer. I didn't mean to disappear. I said quietly. She looked at me. "You didn't, you just paused." She reached into her coat again, pulled out a second card, this one smaller, folded in half, like a secret inside only. 3 words, "Still your friend." I looked at her, and this time I smiled. We sat there as the sun finally broke through the clouds, golden and slow, washing the world in warmth, and, for the first time in years, I let myself feel the day, feel the hour, feel the moment, not as something to endure, but something I was allowed to keep that evening. I marked the date not because I didn't trust her to remember again next year, but because I wanted to. I wanted to remember. I wanted to show up for her, for me, for the part of me that had stopped believing I was worth the effort. And when I opened my calendar, I didn't just circle my birthday, circled hers and wrote beside it, "Don't let her be the only one who remembers." The healing didn't come all at once. It never does, but it came in pieces, in warm coffee, in handwritten cards, in long silences shared on river benches, and the act of being remembered, not for what I'd done or hadn't, but simply for existing, for still being here even after everything's never stopped remembering me. So I started to remember myself, one soft moment at a time. Some friendships are loud, full of noise and celebration, and shared photos and endless scrolls. Ours was different, quieter, older, woven into the fabric of forgotten time. Kind of friendship that didn't need to be maintained, only returned to, like a book with a ribbon marking the page you never really left. Days passed, not dramatically, not filled with confessions or grand reunions, but in small gestures. She brought me bread one day, still warm from a bakery I didn't know existed. I gave her a scarf I'd found at the back of my closet, still wrapped in the scent of things I used to be. We met twice a week. Same bench, same time, sometimes with coffee, sometimes with words, often with silence. Once, she showed me a photo, us, 15, wearing matching raincoats in the middle of a summer storm. She smiled. "Still my favorite day." I asked why. "You hated the rain, but stayed anyway." "Because I liked it." I had forgotten that, but not the way she said it. Like remembering was enough to bring it back, and maybe it was. Maybe all we are is made of the things we choose to remember. The bench became our cathedral, rain or shine. We sat there, unfolding, repairing, remembering. She brought me her days in pieces. A poem she read, a feather she found, a word she mispronounced but liked better. That why, and I brought her mine. I tried to finish a letter I never sent, a dream I wasn't ready to say out loud. We didn't speak about the years I lost. Not directly, not sharply, but it hung in the air like mist, present, gentle, never judged. Then one morning she asked, "Do you know what the first card said?" "The very first one I ever gave you." I shook my head. It said, "Happy You Day," because birthdays felt too small a word for you. I didn't answer, not because I didn't want to, but because I couldn't net with words. Not yet. So reached for her hand, held it not tightly, just enough for her to know I was there, still here. The seasons began to change. Our bench turned golden with fallen leaves, then pale with frost, and still we met, even when the air bit at our cheeks, even when the sky fell earlier each day. She never asked where I'd gone during those silent years, but one day I told her anyway. It wasn't a single thing, not a fall, not a break, just a slow fading. Like I was folding myself into smaller and smaller corners until I couldn't find the way back out. She nodded, only said, "I waited at the edge until you did." That night I dreamed of her again. But it wasn't the dream of memory. It was new. We were walking through a forest of candles, Each flame a different moment, each flicker a breath I'd forgotten to take. She was ahead, not too far, just far enough for me to follow, just close enough to feel sci-fi woke with tears on my face, and the first full breath I'd taken in years. We met again the next day. I brought her a card. Not for her birthday, but because I wanted to. Inside, I wrote to remembered when I couldn't. Now I remember because you taught me house. She didn't open it right away, just held it against her chest, and smiled like it was the sun. Time became softer after that. Not healed, but healing. She came into my home again, walked through the dust and dishes without judgment, sat at my kitchen table like she never left. I found myself humming again, filling rooms with sound. I didn't notice she hung photos on my walls, ones I'd forgotten I had let them stay. One afternoon, she brought me a cake, small, lopsided, perfect, not for a birthday, not for any occasion at all, just because she said, sometimes the most important days are the ones we don't write down. So we celebrated that unmarked day with crumbs on our fingers, laughter in our lungs, and a silence that felt full instead of empty. Later that night, she left her scarf behind by accident, but I kept it folded, neatly placed beside the old cards, not as a keepsake, but as a reminder that people like her existed. Memory, that warmth, that gentle kind of love, it stayed long after she left for the evening, long after the wind began to rattle the windows. It stayed, and when I looked in the mirror the next morning, I saw someone new, or maybe someone old, returning. I started writing again. Not poems, not novels, just thoughts, little fragments of me scattered across pages like breadcrumbs, leading back to a self I was starting to trust again. One day she came to the bench, eyes wide, hands excited. She held up a postcard. Guess what I found in my drawer? She said, was a birthday card I'd written for her, but never gave, dated 5 years ago. Inside, in shaky handwriting, I had written, you always remember me this year. I wanted to remember you first. She looked at me, and for the first time, I saw her cry, not sad tears, not broken ones, but the kind that fall when two timelines finally meet again, when you realize the bridge never broke. It only waited. The bench remains ours, even now, Arvin, as the days stretch and soften, even as life returns to both of us, because that's what friendship is. Not constant contact, not daily exchanges, but the quiet agreement that no matter how far one of us fades, the other will leave the light on and remember until we do too. Spring returns slowly, not in bursts, but in soft gestures. A warmer breeze, the scent of thawed earth, the first green bud on a tree that had been bare too long. I noticed these things again, not because they were louder, but because I was quieter. She noticed too. You're more here now, she said. I nodded. I feel it, not all at once, not fully, but in pieces. We started walking again, not just sitting, not just waiting, but moving through the world side by side. We talked about things I'd missed, books she loved, things I used to paint, places we swore we'd go, but never did. And sometimes we made plans again, not big ones, not far, just promises like, let's walk tomorrow too, and I'll bring strawberries next time. I stopped counting the years I lost, started measuring days by moments that mattered. Her laugh, a song on the radio, the way sunlight scattered across the floor in late afternoon. I wasn't whole, but I was no longer hollow. On morning, she brought an envelope worn soft at the corners from your 17th birthday. She said inside was a letter from me to Miriton in a time I barely remembered. In it, I wrote, dear me, if you ever forget who you are, find her, she'll remind you. She looked up, eyes glowing. You knew even then, and maybe I did, or maybe. The letter waited for this version of me to be ready. Either way, it landed not in my hands, but in my chest, taped it to my mirror. Right beside the scarf she left behind, a daily reminder that I had always been loved, even by versions of myself I thought I lost. We spent a day planting things, basil, lavender, little pieces of green that needed care, the kind of slow, nurturing McKay. I was only just learning again. She said, you're like this too, growing even when you don't notice. I didn't reply, just pressed my hand into the soil, felt its cool forgiveness, let it hold me without question. Later, She told me about a dream she had, that we were both birds, flying over a quiet sea, no destination, just togetherness. I think it meant you were ready to fly again. She said, and I could stop flying in circles. We cried a little, then the kind of cry that comes without warning, not loud, not gasping. Just tears that slipped through the cracks we'd spent years sealing shut. When it passed, we laughed. The kind of laugh that felt like new breath. I found old journals tucked in forgotten drawers, filled with unfinished sentences, lists of things I thought I'd never do again. One list said, trust someone, celebrate a birthday, laugh without guilt. Wake up wanting to stay awake. All of them crossed out, not with regret, but with quiet victory. On a rainy evening, she brought over candles, the good kind, that smell like old books and cedar. We lit them without speaking, watched the flames flicker like our stories were still unfolding, but safe now, not afraid of the dark. Then she looked at me and said, your next birthday, let's make it loud. I smiled, not because I believed it fully, but because I wanted to, and sometimes that's enough. She made a playlist, songs from when we were 15, 17, 20. Some I didn't remember, some made me laugh, some made me close my eyes and feel things I thought were gone. She played one and pulled me into a slow dance in the middle of my living room. Bare feet, warm floor. You forgot this too, she said, but you love this song. And I did. I remembered halfway through. And for the first time, I didn't push the memory away. Night I slept with the windows open, listened to the wind, and whispered, thank you, not to anyone in particular, but to the moment, to the air, to the friend who stayed there. Was still healing to do, still days where the fog returned, still moments where I didn't know who I was. But they came less often, and when they did, I had her voice, her silence, her warmth to carry me through. She brought me cake again, a random day in July, no reason. She said, but I wanted you to have a piece of something sweet today. And that's when I realized this was our new tradition, celebrating the days that didn't have to be earned, just shared. She stayed late that evening, told me stories I'd never heard about her own quiet struggles, the nights she almost gave up on me, but never did. And I held her hand. This time, I was the one who didn't let go. We started writing letters to each other, to ourselves, to the versions of us that needed to hear we were loved. We hid them in the books. We passed back and forth, little time capsules, little reminders that even if we forgot again, even if we drifted, the love would stay tucked somewhere waiting. One day, I asked her why she never stopped, why she kept writing, waiting, showing up. She looked at me like the answer was obvious. Because you're the kind of person worth waiting for, even when you don't see it yet. I didn't say anything, didn't need to be, 'cause in that moment, I believed her, and that more than anything, felt like the real birthday, the moment something new was born inside me. Something brave, something warm, something whole. The next morning was quiet, but not empty. She had left a note on the counter, written on the back of a coffee receipt. It said, today is not a special day, but it's still yours, so treat it gently. And I watered the plants, opened the curtains. Let the soft gray light of an overcast morning fill the room. It was the kind of light that didn't ask for attention, just existed softly, like her. She called around noon. Didn't say much, just, hey, I'm here. And that was enough. We met at the library, the old one with creaky floors and windows that wept when it rained. She brought a list of books, I brought a notebook, and we sat in silence, reading, writing, breathing, like we were learning again how to belong to a world that didn't demand we be loud. She found a book about forgotten holidays. We read about festivals that no one celebrated anymore, days that used to mean something and now lived only in dusty page. She looked at me smiling and said, we should make our own holidays. On the days we almost gave up, but didn't. I nodded, yes, let's celebrate survival. So we made a calendar, not for birthdays or anniversaries, but for little victories, the day I smiled without it hurting, the night I didn't cry, the afternoon I walked outside just to feel the sun. Each one, a quiet holiday marked with a star. Some days she'd leave notes in the fridge, taped to milk cartons or inside egg cartons, things like you're doing better than you think, or today isn't perfect, but it doesn't need to be. I collected them, taped them inside my cupboard, a secret wall of kindness when no one was looking. I read them like scripture one evening. We baked a cake. No reason, no guests, no candles, just us flour on the floor. Laughter in the air. I messed up the frosting. She dropped an egg. Laughed until we couldn't breathe, and then we sat on the kitchen floor. Eating the crooked cake with spoons, she said, "This is better than perfect," and I believed her. We made a new rule. Whenever one of us forgot something important about ourselves, the other had to remind them, so she reminded me that I was kind, that I once cried watching a dog cross the street, that I always hummed when I painted, and I reminded her that her silence could heal, that she once memorized a poem just to help me sleep, that she made pain feel less permanent. Our friendship became a rhythm. Not daily, not constant, but real. When I fell back, she waited. When she faltered, I held her hand. There was no scoreboard, no keeping track, only showing up again. And again and again. I started writing letters to my past selves. The 17-year-old who felt invisible. The 21-year-old who stopped celebrating her birthday. The 24-year-old who forgot how to hope. Each letter began the same way. "I'm sorry, but I'm here now," and I left them in places I used to hide from, under my bed, behind old photo albums, inside journals I hadn't touched in years, planting healing where the hurt had lived. She called me once, crying for no reason she could name. "I don't know why I'm like this today," she said, and I whispered, "Because you're human, because you care, because even the strongest hearts get tired." She said, "Thank you for remembering me," and I replied, "Always." We started walking in the rain again. Without umbrellas, just two people letting the sky wash over old memories. She said, "I used to be afraid of rain. It's made everything feel heavier." I said, "Now it just feels honest. We didn't rush, didn't hide from puddles, let them find us one morning." She surprised me with breakfast pancakes shaped like heart syrup and strawberries. A note tucked into the napkin that read, "Today is a new day, so take it with joy." We ate slowly, savoring silence like it was sacred. She found my old art supplies covered in dust, but still waiting, still whole. "Will you paint again?" she asked. I shrugged. I'm not sure how. She smiled. "Then start with how it feels, not how it looks." So I did. I painted shadows, memories, hope, and when I showed her, she whispered, "This is what healing looks like." One night, we sat under string lights, drinking tea wrapped in blankets. She looked at the stars and said, "I wonder if they remember the wishes we made as kids." I replied, "Even if they don't, I think you did for both of us." She looked down, quiet, moved, and said, "I always will." We stopped waiting for special days, started making thema. Good sleep, a finished book, a deep breath on a hard morning, each one worthy of celebration. She started leaving flowers by my door. Wildflowers, messy, alive, no cards, no explanation. Just color, fragrance, presence. I began to expect them, not out of entitlement, but out of gratitude, knowing that someone remembered, that someone still believed in beauty on ordinary days. We went to the sea once. A quiet stretch of gray sand and whispering waves. She wrote our names in the shore, then stood back as the tide erased. Mai looked at her confused. She said, "Because we are not fixed, we are fluid. We can disappear and return again and again and still be real." I picked up a shell, pressed it to my ear, sighed the sound of something ancient, something soft, something eternal. Lit reminded me of her voice, always near. Even when Farron the drive back, we played music loud, sang until our voices cracked, then turned it down, just to sit in silence. Now in that silence, there was everything: history, hope, and the soft reminder that I was no longer alone.